As I said at the top of the show, last week the state of North Carolina filed a lawsuit against Juul Labs. That's the company that manufactures most of the e-cigarettes used today, about 70% of the market. The Attorney General of North Carolina, Josh Stein, is joining us today to talk about it. Thanks so much for joining us on Education Matters.
Keith, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the lawsuit.
Yeah.
Why did you take the step, the very first country to do so, to sue Juul Labs?
I went to Sewell Elementary School in Chapel Hill. I sued Juul Labs to protect North Carolina's kids because this is a company, it's actually 75% they control of this e-cigarette market, and it has become an epidemic in our schools. I have two high schoolers. If the people watching the show have any knowledge of anybody in middle school or high school, ask them, do their friends vape? And you will hear an astonishing report, because if you go to any high school bathroom, there's going to be vapor happening between classes. It has become an epidemic. This word, by the way, isn't my word. It's the Trump administration's FDA commissioner and U.S. Surgeon General. This use has skyrocketed, an increase in the last year of about 80% for high school students and 40 or 50% in middle schools. And we cannot have another generation of young people addicted to nicotine. We've had an incredible gain in public health in that the percentage of kids who smoke has dramatically declined over the last 20 years. And we've lost all of those gains in the last 3 years because of Juul.
And that's your primary focus from reading over your lawsuit is focused on how they market and sell to minors.
Correct.
Is that the reason why this lawsuit was brought?
From the very design of the product, its intent was to appeal to young people, including minors. Here's a Juul. A lot of people hadn't seen one yet. It actually has a way to connect to a USB port. It looks like a USB port. So parents see this in their kids' backpacks, do not even know what it is. So they made it look cool and hip. They use flavors that appeal to kids, dessert and fruit flavored, cool cucumber, mango, creme brulee. And then they actually alter the nicotine so that it goes down more smoothly to a virgin smoker's throat, which is entirely meant, they say it's about moving people who smoke to another product, but why would you make it so that it appeals to people who haven't smoked before? And in fact, the packaging says, if it's too hard, just keep trying because there's a perfect puff for you. It's all about hooking a new generation.
Yeah, and then you mentioned about when I remember first hearing about these products, I don't know, a decade ago, it was about a safer alternative to smoking. It was a smoking cessation tool, but it looks like not only, like you said, it's hard to think about. I don't think the Marlboro man is looking for the creme brulee smoke, but the facts are very sobering. Teens aged 15 to 17 are more likely to use Juul than what they say that their targeted demographic is, which is over 25.
That's exactly right. Their growth is all among kids. They've seeded essentially a disease among children, and it's just spread of its own accord. But it didn't happen by accident. They actually went on to social media sites that they know teens use, hired media influencers who have huge teen audiences, and essentially propagated that this is what a cool high schooler does. We were just talking a minute ago that the last episode of Game of Thrones, there's this meme of Sophie Turner, one of the leading young actresses on the show, and she's vaping and she tweets at Juul. There was a study this week that showed that nearly half of all Juul Twitter followers are minors. They know this, and that's what they're using to spread this disease.
Do you believe Juul and other e-cigarette manufacturers are trying to get young people addicted to nicotine?
What they're trying to do today, I can't speak. But what they have done, this company is only about 3.5 years old. It's a brand spanking new company.
Doing pretty well, though.
But it's worth $40 billion, and they have just taken over middle schools and high schools across this country. They have engaged in aggressive marketing and sales practices to appeal to young people, including minors. They can't do that. They can't create this virus that spreads among young people. Now today say, oh, we're only using old actors and we're only telling people to use it in this way. they've already created the problem, and they have to pay for those consequences because we have a ton, thousands of young people at risk of addiction to nicotine, which I know you're going to be talking with some public health folks later, but it's incredibly dangerous to alter the brain of a teenager and foster addiction, puts them at incredible risk of addiction to other things like methamphetamine, cocaine, alcohol, tobacco.
Well, okay, so you obviously, we are going to talk to someone from North Carolina Public Health in a little bit, but I mean, you obviously consulted some experts before you made take this. Do you believe these products are dangerous?
Absolutely, they're dangerous.
Yeah. We've seen that some research that came out of UNC and Chapel Hill and Duke that showed that the flavors themselves, as you just mentioned, all the ones, that those actually, it's those chemicals and those flavors, maybe not even necessarily the nicotine, that also we don't really know sort of what the effect is on lungs.
Basically, any person who's out there juuling or vaping is a guinea pig because we have no idea what the long-term health effects are. Everyone theorizes that they are less dangerous than smoking a cigarette, and
because it's water, I mean, it's vapor, right? That's what it sounds like, right?
And likely it is less dangerous because we know smoking cigarettes will kill you. I mean, it causes lung cancer. But to heat up a flavoring, a chemical, and inhale it in your lung is totally different than putting the flavoring of creme brulee in a food and digesting it through your digestive system. Your lung, your pulmonary system is totally different respiratory than your digestive system. And so we truly have no idea what the long-term effects are, but we know that nicotine leads to addiction. A lot of people think there's no nicotine in this.
Right.
This is more intense than smoking a cigarette in terms of the nicotine. So it's much more likely.
There's actually, I think I read, I don't have the data in front of me, like how many packs of cigarettes of nicotine are in those, like one cartridge.
One of the things we were claiming in our complaint is they say that a cartridge is equal to a pack of cigarettes. But the studies show that a person who consumes it gets 30 to 100% more nicotine from a Juul than they do from a pack of cigarettes. So they're misrepresenting how intense and how addictive they are, and that's illegal.
All right, so let me ask you, let's shift gears just a little bit. How do you balance as the state's Attorney General between sort of appropriate regulation, appropriate, legal action versus sort of overreach into what maybe some might call like a nanny state? I was thinking back when, Mayor Bloomberg in New York wanted to ban big gulps because it was unhealthy. I mean, you think this was, is this an appropriate sort of, how do you draw the line as the Attorney General?
Sure. Well, the way I draw the line is this is a new product that was designed, marketed, and sold intentionally to young people, including minors, that has incredible long-term health risks with absolutely no health benefit to a first-time user. There's nothing good about this if you haven't been smoking cigarettes before. So I want to protect North Carolina's kids, and if we don't get ahead of this, we have increased, like I said, 80% from last year to this year. We know that 19 is going to be a substantial increase over 18. If we don't get ahead of this, we're going to have an entire generation of young people addicted to nicotine and all of the negative health consequences that result. And I cannot sit here as the Attorney General of North Carolina, see a company engage in unfair and deceptive trade practices that are hurting our people and not take action.
All right, as we wrap it up, you announced this lawsuit last week, but just this week, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Tim Kaine, Democrat from Virginia, Hillary Clinton's running mate from a couple years ago, they both announced a bill together to raise the nationwide minimum age for all tobacco products from 18 to 21. Do you support that? Do you think that's something we should do in North Carolina?
Strongly. What's kind of interesting is you see Mitch McConnell, Kentucky, Tim Kaine, Virginia, Josh Stein, North Carolina, the three leading tobacco states in the country. But we all agree that we've got to keep tobacco away from young people. None of us are trying, I'm not trying to ban Juul.
Right.
I'm not trying to ban cigarettes. I'm trying to keep them from being sold to kids and getting these products out of our high schools would be a huge step forward in public health.
Well, thank you for being here. We're going to be watching the lawsuit unfold, and maybe we'll have a come back on when things heat up.
Thanks,
Chief. Appreciate it. After a brief commercial break, we have two guests to help us understand more about these e-cigarette risks and are there risks. Spoiler alert, there are risks. But before we go to break, see if you can answer this question. True or false, Teens who use e-cigarettes are more likely to smoke regular cigarettes.
Education Matters is brought to you each week in part by Paragon Bank, serving others, enriching lives.